Frozen in 2024, I awoke to sinister secrets. What I discovered will haunt you forever. Clara jolted awake, heart racing, her bedroom chilled by the ghostly winds howling outside. The night felt alive with dread. Each creak of the house echoed like a warning. Something was off. It felt like her entire world, once familiar, was slowly crumbling around her. The bitter cold seeped into her bones, forming a thick fog of anxiety that made her skin crawl. She couldn't shake the feeling that something evil lurked in the corners of her rundown suburb. As she stumbled into the kitchen, the old fluorescent light flickered like it was participating in her panic. The backyard freezer hummed ominously, a constant drone that felt almost sentient, taunting her with its relentless grind against the cold. The freezer was as ancient as her marriage, a relic that seemed to echo memories of happier days before Evan's father walked out, before the neighborhood began to rot. Clara pulled the door open, blinking against the blinding light, only to find a hidden compartment nestled deep in the icy depths. Her heart dropped, terror wrapping around her throat like a vice. Inside lay a collection of personal items, torn photographs, remnants of a childhood long forgotten, a chipped toy soldier and a bloody glove, its crimson stain stark against the chilling white. The pieces of someone else's life, someone who had vanished. Panic surged through her like ice water. The neighbors had disappeared without a trace, and now it seemed the past had come knocking. Suddenly, her phone buzzed violently against the counter, snapping her from her spiraling thoughts. The screen lit up with cold, precise messages from an anonymous user, each word a dagger. "I see you." Fear tightened its grip around her as she read on. They detailed her daily routines, turning her life into a twisted movie script. The police dismissed her reports as overactive imagination, brushing off her pleas like dust on their desks. She felt like a ghost in her own life, invisible to those sworn to protect. "Mom! We gotta go." Evan burst into the room, eyes wide with a fear that mirrored her own. The boy was already withdrawing into himself, finding solace in the shadows. Clara's heart broke just a little more seeing him this way. Before they could gather their thoughts, they stepped out into the biting wind, the streetlights flickering ominously above them, like watchful eyes. They headed to the corner store, the once vibrant hub of the neighborhood now just a husk. There, standing behind the counter, was Councilman Tom. He held a welcoming smile, but the shadows in his eyes whispered a different story. Something had shifted. It felt wrong. The townsfolk's trust had turned sour, and they were adrift in a sea of instability. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. As they exited, Evan shivered beside her. Clara's instinct kicked in. She eyed their surroundings, half expecting shadowy figures to emerge from the gloom, clutching secrets of their own. The alleyways whispered of betrayals, the very air thick with mistrust. With every step, they pulled farther from familiar safety. Suddenly, a clattering noise erupted behind them. A figure loomed, shadowed yet familiar. The realization crashed into her like a wave. The specter of Tom emerged, draped in malice and authority. Clara tightened her grip on Evan's arm, the urgency of survival sparking fire in her veins. Before she could scream, the world around them folded into chaos as she faced a truth darker than she ever imagined. Clara could feel the weight of eyes upon them, secrets lurking in the darkness, waiting for someone to unleash them. The reality settled. They were surrounded by menace, their own neighborhood now a predator. Would they be swallowed whole by the very shadows they had sought to escape? The shadows closed in as Clara and Evan stumbled back, urgency and fear smashing against them like waves crashing against a cliff. Tom stepped forward, his smile stretching unnaturally across his face. "You shouldn't be out this late," he said, his voice smooth as honey yet cutting like glass. Let us go, Mom. Evan urged, pulling at Clara's sleeve, but she couldn't tear her gaze from Tom's eyes. They glinted in the dim light, predatory and sharp. With a sudden movement, Tom's hand darted into his pocket, and Clara's heart leapt into her throat. I just wanted to ask if you found what you were looking for. He produced a small device, a recording camera, its lens glinting like a malevolent eye. Your little discoveries might interest more than just me. Clara shivered. What do you want? His smile widened, exposing teeth that looked almost too perfect, too white. To help you. I know you've been feeling a little lost, Clara. It's hard to trust anyone, especially with all those strange disappearances around here. But I could show you things. Evan's grip tightened as he instinctively pulled Clara back, positioning himself slightly in front. Stay away from my mom. His voice quivered, but there was anger there too. Tom's expression didn't change, it remained as cold as the winter air. I'm not here to harm you, yet, he replied, tilting his head slightly as if contemplating Evan's resolve. But if you seek the truth behind these shadows, you'll have to be ready to confront it. And believe me, not everyone wants that. Without warning, Tom turned abruptly, gliding away into the darkness with an unnatural grace. Clara felt her heart race. We need to get home, now. She whispered urgently, grabbing Evan's hand and propelling them forward. As they raced down the street, the chill deepened, their breath creating white clouds that vanished into the night. The familiar landmarks distorted by the growing darkness. Clara could hear echoes of footfalls shadowing them, closing in. She spun around but saw nothing. Just the deserted street, every house dim with despair. They reached their home, frantically fumbling with the door. She could feel eyes pressing against her back, the sensation of being watched making her skin crawl. Once inside, they locked the door and drew the curtains tight, barricading themselves from the nightmare outside. What was that? Evan gasped, his little chest heaving as he tried to catch his breath. Clara's heart raced as she tried to gather her thoughts. I don't know, but we're not safe. We can't stay here. She glanced at the nightmare-inducing freezer in the corner, fear slithering in her gut. It had hidden things before, it could do so again. We must leave tonight, Evan. We need to find. A sudden cry shattered her thoughts. It echoed from outside, an agonizing scream that cut through the night air like a jagged knife. It was followed by another, fainter this time. Clara's blood ran cold. Someone was out there. Mom, I don't want to go out. Evan whimpered, trembling beside her. We have to, she insisted, torn between the terror outside and the horrors that had already whispered to her from the freezer's depths. As they gathered their courage, another message buzzed on Clara's phone. An ominous reminder sent chills racing down her spine. Don't go looking too deep, or you might find what you really fear. The screen flickered again with the same anonymous sender, and a new text popped up, they're watching and so am I. A piercing chill washed over Clara. The shadows in their home felt deeper, darker, and alive. Mom? Evan's small voice was a plea, wrapped in innocent fear. Clara realized they had stumbled into a web larger than they could comprehend. And behind those watching eyes lay secrets that could bring their entire world crashing down. What would they uncover if they ventured deeper into the night? What awaited them outside those tightly shut doors? Would the truth reveal salvation or damnation? Clara's breath was frantic as she paced the narrow living room, her mind racing. She glanced at Evan, who stood by the window, eyes wide with fear, peeking through the curtains as if daring the darkness to slide past. We can't just stay here, Mom. Clara fought the surge of panic rising in her throat. What do you think is out there, Evan? Her voice was steadier than she felt. We need to figure out what happened. We need to know if it's safe. But did she really believe that? Clenching her fists, she turned to the freezer. That cursed thing had loomed over them too long, holding its secrets like a predator baiting its prey. Let us just go. Evan's voice trembled, pulling her back from the brink of decision. Before she could respond, another scream sliced through the night, sharp, electric. It hung in the air like a ghost, twisting Clara's stomach in knots. No, she breathed out, feeling a chill seep into her bones. An urgent tapping came suddenly against the door, quick and repetitive. Clara's heart leapt. What if it's someone in trouble? She said, trying to keep Evan close, desperate to shield him from whatever was happening. But a sickening part of her said that nothing simple lurked in the shadows tonight. The tapping grew louder, almost frantic now. She stumbled toward the door, her hand trembling on the knob. Clara looked to Evan, who shook his head vigorously, eyes wide with a mix of curiosity and terror. "No, Mom. We can't let them in," he cried. She hesitated. The scream faded into silence, replaced by that soft, urgent knocking. A whisper in the dark called to her, both inviting and haunting. Help, it seemed to plead. What if someone really is in trouble? Clara pressed her forehead against the door, listening intently. But the voice was gone now, leaving only uncertainty in its wake. Then, suddenly, the knocking stopped. Clara's stomach twisted painfully. "Evan, stay here." She turned away from the door, racing to the freezer in the corner. She threw it open, heart pounding, memories of hidden horrors rushing back. Had they truly left that nightmare behind? What lay in the darkest corners of that cold, unfeeling metal? The freezer's interior was pitch black, a void where her heart wanted to believe there was something left in the darkness, something not malevolent. She reached in and felt something cold and hard under her fingertips. But before she could grasp it, a loud crash erupted outside. Glass shattered somewhere down the street, a cacophony of chaos invading the fragile stillness of their home. Evan whimpered, pressing himself against the wall. "Mom," he cried. "Please, let us go." Clara ripped her hand from the freezer. She could sense time slipping, losing grip on reality. She had to make a choice. Shoving fear aside, she ran to the front window and pulled the curtains aside. A flicker of light bounced off their driveway, the silhouette of a man flickering in and out of the glow from a street lamp. It was too abrupt, too unnatural, almost as if he was flickering like a faulty bulb. There was something about the way he moved, something wrong. Clara's breath hitched. "Evan, stay down," she whispered, leaning back as the flickering stopped abruptly. The figure stood still, the shadows creeping close, blending into his form. "Mom?" Evan's small voice trembled as he moved toward her, drawn by the aura of dread enveloping them. "What is he doing?" "I don't know," she replied, her voice lowering to a breathless whisper. "But I think he asked." Before she could finish, the figure lunged forward. Clara's heart raced. She spun, grabbing Evan and pulling him back into the shadows of their home, their world already warped beyond recognition. Then, a sudden burst of thunder rumbled outside, shaking the windows. As the darkness seemed to fold in on them, Clara caught a glimpse of something glinting in the figure's hand, something shiny and sharp. A knife. They needed a plan. They needed a way out of this nightmare before whatever hunted them found their scent. Clara's mind whirled with thoughts, desperation clawing at her throat. "Mom, there is something wrong with the lights in the basement," Evan whispered, his finger trembling towards the ceiling light that blinked ominously overhead. "Go," Clara ordered, adrenaline pumping through her veins. "We need to find a way to keep safe." As they hurried toward the basement door, both felt the weight of 1,000 unanswered questions hovering over them. But what really lurked in those darkened corners? What truths awaited beneath their feet, hidden in the world below? The anticipation twisted tightly, promising that whatever was down there had secrets, deep longing for freedom, freedom at a cost. What awaited them in the depths of the basement? Would it be safety, or the horrifying depths of fear itself waiting to swallow them whole? The basement door creaked as Clara turned the handle, the sound echoing ominously in the silent house. She wrestled with the knob, the metallic scrape sending a shiver down her spine. Cold air rushed up from the stairs, carrying a musty scent, a blend of damp and decay. Clara squinted into the blackness, heart hammering like a mad drummer in her chest. The basement stairs felt like a rickety old bridge stretching into a void. With a deep breath, Clara led the way, forcing herself to move forward as Evan followed closely, trembling. Each step down felt heavier, as if the darkness itself was trying to pull them back, wrap them in its suffocating embrace. At the bottom, Clara flicked a switch, but the light bulb flickered, casting an unsettling glow that barely illuminated the cramped space. Shadows danced along the walls, twisting and contorting, as if one's very fears were living in the dark corners. There was a sudden crack that echoed as Evan stumbled, falling against something hard. "Careful!" Clara snapped, casting a worried glance around. "What did you bump into?" Evan took a shaky breath, pointing down. "It's a trunk, I think." "A trunk." Clara stepped toward it, the whispers from outside seeming to fade in the presence of this forgotten thing. The locked chest sat there, heavy and unyielding, as if waiting for them. The cold metal latch looked ancient and rusty, almost mocking them. The screams outside faded to a muffled murmur, leaving only their ragged breaths and the unsettling sound of water dripping somewhere in the darkness. Clara knelt beside the trunk, fingers itching to pry it open. "Evan, help me with this." "Mom, I don't think we should," he started, but Clara shot him a look that sent the boy silent. She struggled with the latch, her hands clammy with sweat. Finally, it clicked open, and Clara's heart raced. She pulled it up, not fully prepared for the sight that greeted her. It was filled with papers, scattered photographs, and bizarre artifacts. Clara grabbed a photo, her eyes widening in disbelief. A picture of herself and Evan, taken just a few months ago. They were smiling, happy, but the image felt distorted, hurried, the edges crudely torn, as if someone had yanked them from a scrapbook. "What?" she whispered, looking back at Evan, confusion spiking through her. "Mom, look at this." Evan pointed again, this time to a peculiar item, a small, rusted key, glinting dully amongst the chaos. There was something unnerving about it, like it belonged to doors long forgotten. Clara's fingers brushed against it. A sudden chill hit Clara like an ice-cold wave crashing. The basement shook with a low rumble, vibrations coursing through the wooden floor, vibrating the chest beneath her hands. "We need to go back upstairs," she uttered, her breath catching in her throat. Fear was creeping in with the thundering, but as she turned to leave, the basement light flickered out, plunging them into pitch darkness. Clara's pulse raced, her heart drumming loudly against her ribs. "Evan!" she called into the black. "Stay close." She felt his presence beside her, small and frail against the vastness of nothing. The air became thick, oppressive, like the very walls were closing in, suffocating them. The darkness pulsed, alive, and Clara swore she could hear whispers wrapping around her, slicing through the silence with insidious intent. "What's happening?" Evan's voice shook, barely a whisper, as panic slipped through with each breath. "I don't know." Clara gasped, the trunk in front of her now a dark specter. "We have to." Before she could finish, something shifted in the space behind them. A loud thud echoed off the walls. Clara's heart stopped. That noise, it was too close. She turned slowly, dread unfurling in her stomach, praying it was just her frantic mind, but as the air grew heavier, she felt something creeping into their sanctuary beneath the house, like a predator drawing near, hunting for its next victim. Clara and Evan stood frozen, their reflections swallowed by the depth of the darkness, adrenaline igniting their instincts. What was creeping closer? What awaited them in that suffocating gloom? Were they truly safe from the world above, or had they plunged deeper into a nightmare that was just beginning to unfold? The echo of that thud lingered in the air, a palpable weight pressing against Clara's chest. She strained her ears to catch any sound, any clue of what lurked in the suffocating blackness around them. Her hand instinctively reached for Evan, fingers trembling as she clutched his arm, feeling his small body quaking with fear. "Evan, stay close," she whispered urgently, her voice barely a breath. "We need to find a way out." In the deep black, the shadows seemed to swirl and shift, blurring the lines between reality and nightmare. Clara took a cautious step backward, directionless but desperate to distance herself from the unseen terror that lingered behind. Every inch of the wood beneath her feet creaked, groaned, as if even the house had come to life. Uneasy and restless, another noise punctured the stillness, a scraping sound, dragging softly against the concrete floor. Clara's blood ran cold. In the heartbeat of silence that followed, she could hear her own breathing mingling with Evan's quickened gasps. Clara glanced back toward the trunk, half expecting it to loom larger, to swallow them whole. It was hard to fight the urge to look inside again, as if the answers to their horror lay buried within its depths. But the shadows cast by the flickering light haunted her thoughts, taunting her with fragments of a truth she was not yet prepared to face, and then another thud, louder this time. Clara spun around, feeling Evan's breath hitch. "What is that?" he gasped, eyes wide, reflecting terror back at her. "I don't know," she breathed, guilt simmering in her throat. She wanted to be brave for him, but her own fear clawed at her. A faint shift in the air preceded the presence that bore down on them. Clara felt it before she heard it, a chilling rush of wind that whispered like 1,000 voices tangled in agony. Panic surged in her chest, but all she could do was stay still. The whispers grew louder, forming words that twisted and coiled around her mind. "Leave now, turn back," Evan whimpered beside her, nearly begging, "Mom, let us just go, I can't take this." "Not yet," Clara whispered sharply, not wanting to admit to him or herself just how close they were to the precipice of something horrible. "We need to find a way out first." Suddenly, the single flickering bulb above them flickered once more, then blinked out completely, plunging them back into oppressive darkness. Clara's heart raced as she flicked her wrist. The small flashlight she always kept in her pocket burst to life, beam cutting through the dark like a cold knife. Shadows leaped and retreated with the artificial light as she turned slowly, searching every corner, and there, just at the edge of the light's reach, she saw it, an outline, nearly blending into the corner of the room. A figure. The shape was amorphous, shifting like a ghost, but its eyes glinted with something alive and hungry. Clara's breath caught as icy dread snaked through her veins. "Evan, back up!" she shouted, pulling him closer to her. The dread pooled in her stomach, heavier than the dark surrounding them. "What do we do?" he pleaded, eyes darting to the dark corners, looking for escape. The figure seemed to shimmer, shifting forward slightly, trailing whispers that curled around them like smoke. It spoke without words, voice threading through their minds, something dreadful yet strangely inviting. "Find the truth." The command washed over Clara, saturating her senses with a mix of dread and unavoidable curiosity. What truth? What had they stumbled upon? "Mom!" Evan whimpered, clenching her hand tightly. The reality of their situation crashed down, and Clara could feel the suffocating weight of fear build within her. With trembling resolve, she aimed the flashlight directly at that lurking shadow, hoping to break through the curtain of darkness. But as she did, the figure melted away like mist, and the basement trembled with a soft rumble, almost mocking her fragile bravery. "Clara, find it!" The voice faded into the walls, a chilling breeze brushing her cheek. Courage crumbled, and she almost turned to flee, but something compelled her not to. They couldn't leave, not yet. Not until she understood what this nightmare wanted. As the air thickened, binding them to the dread of the unknown, a door creaked somewhere within those funnels of darkness, echoing with ominous invitation. What lay behind that door? What truth was waiting to choke the light out of their world? The creak of the door echoed like thunder in Clara's ears. It seemed alive, begging them to draw closer. The sound sent shivers down her spine, but she couldn't back down now. Evan's tiny hands were clutched tightly in her own, his trembling body a constant reminder of the fear wrapping around them both like a noose. "Stay close, just a little longer," she whispered to Evan, her own voice quaking as if she could convince him and herself that they were safe. But panic clawed at her insides, urging her to flee. What awaited them beyond that door? As the door swung open an inch, a familiar scent wafted over them, dust mixed with something metallic, sharp like iron. Clara's heart raced at the irony. she had thought they were trapped in this basement yet felt the pull of something else. An overwhelming compulsion to discover what lay beyond. "Mom, I don't want to go in there." Evan's voice was desperate, full of raw, innocent fear. "Please." "I know," Clara choked out, a lump forming in her throat. "But we have to look just for a second." She gripped the flashlight tighter, raising its beam toward the door. It illuminated a narrow, winding staircase leading down even deeper into darkness. Clara felt the floorboards shift slightly beneath their feet as she stepped toward the threshold, heart pounding against her ribcage like a trapped animal. Maybe it will lead us out," she tried to convince herself, but the words felt hollow. Evan's whimpers pierced through the silence, pulling her back to the moment. "We can't. We should just get out of here." The shadows inside seemed to breathe, almost pleading with them. Yet the shrill sound of their heartbeat may have muffled the cries of terror surrounding them. Clara took a deep breath, summoning her courage, and made a decision. With a brisk motion, she stepped through the door, pulling Evan in behind her. The air felt denser, almost sticky, weighing down their shoulders as they traversed the first few steps. The staircase spiraled, tightening in on itself as they descended. The walls radiated an ancient chill, and Clara couldn't ignore the sensation of unseen eyes watching their every movement, hungry and expectant. The flashlight flickered, a cruel reminder of her fragile grip on hope. She cursed under her breath, striking it against her palm. "Stay close, Evan," she urged again, her voice lowered to reverence, fear coiling in the pit of her stomach. They reached a small landing where the staircase opened into an expansive room. Clara's light flickered again but managed to find its breath, casting an ethereal glow that illuminated the space. The sight made her stomach twist. Every wall was lined with dark wooden shelves filled with objects she couldn't comprehend. A stark collection of artifacts that seemed both wrong and whispering secrets to each other. She felt the hairs on her neck rise, a primal instinct warning her to flee. But beneath the surface of that terror curiosity burned. What is this place?" Evan asked, barely above a whisper, eyes wide and reflecting terror. "Something ancient," Clara breathed, inching forward despite every bone in her body screaming to turn back. A massive portrait hung on the wall, depicting a shadowy figure with a twisted smile, and in its eyes shimmered an all-consuming hunger. "Find the truth," echoed in her mind again, resonating like a distant bell tolling a grim announcement. The words were no longer an invitation but a sinister command, tying her to that very room. And then it struck her, what if this was a trap? What if they had stumbled into something that was never meant for them to uncover? A creaking noise jolted her back to reality, the sound of an unseen door swinging shut somewhere behind them. Panic surged again as the room dimmed, shadows creeping across the edges of Clara's vision. It felt as if the walls themselves were slowly closing in. "Mom!" Evan cried, his voice cracking in fear. "Evan, we need to." Before she could finish, the shadows thickened, and Clara felt an unnatural force pulling at her, whispering that terrible command again. It filled her with dread. The truth was here, waiting, but was it a truth she wanted to find? As the shadows twisted closer, a voice emerged, deep and sinister, rumbling through the air. "Welcome, you've come to uncover it." And then the lights flickered again, revealing something that made Clara's blood run cold. What had they awakened in that cursed place? What would they have to face to escape? Clara's heart raced, every beat echoing with dread. The room shrank, shadows sweeping in around them as if they were trying to smother any trace of light. A thick, cold fear gripped her throat. She blinked, willing herself to see clearly, but the corners of the room flickered and waved like smoke. Who are you?" she managed, her voice barely above a whisper, as Evan clutched her arm with desperate fingers. The voice answered, its tone dripping with malice, "I am the keeper of secrets, the conductor of fate." It slithered through the air, curling and weaving, wrapping around them like a serpent. "What do you want from us?" Clara felt the walls constrict even further, panic clawing at her insides. "You sought the truth," the voice coiled around her as the shadows twisted deeper, and now you are bound to it. Before she could comprehend the implications of those words, the room shifted again, the shelves merging and twisting. A loud crash reverberated through the space, sending Evan scrambling behind Clara. "Mom!" he cried, terror saturated within his voice. A chill ran through her legs, grounding her to the spot. Shadows sprouted from the corners, taking on forms distant, indistinct figures. It was as if every nightmare she had ever concealed was surfacing to torment her, clawing at her sanity. "Don't look away, dear Clara, and don't let go of the boy," the sinister voice commanded. "Only then can you navigate the treachery of the truth." "Evan, I need you to hold tight," Clara whispered, her voice trembling. She tightened her grip on his small hand, feeling the tremors that surged through him. The air thickened, vibrating with a low hum that resonated in Clara's bones. She turned her attention to the massive portrait, the shadowy figure grinning wider, eyes seeming to pulse with hunger. Each inhale tasted sour, like rusted metal, and the weight of dread settled heavily in her chest. From the depths of that looming darkness, vicious whispers slithered into her ears. "Reveal what you fear most. Get back!" Clara shouted suddenly, drawing Evan toward her as the whispers intensified. Shadows lunged forward, vibrating with a life of their own, each tendril of darkness promising despair. "We can't stay here. We have to find a way out." Footsteps echoed in the silence, heavy and deliberate, approaching from one of the unseen doors. Clara's eyes darted around, searching for an escape route, but the way they came through felt like a distant memory now. "Mom!" Evan breathed again, his voice small and broken, fear pooling in his wide eyes. In a frantic leap of courage, Clara lifted the flashlight, aiming its beam at the approaching noise. The darkness stirred on the floor, slithering closer, but she stood firm, illuminating the shadows. It felt like a barrier, weak but present, against the encroaching threat. The footsteps grew louder, each echo sending her heart spiraling down into despair. "Truth lives here, Clara," the voice warbled, "but it demands a cost." "What kind of cost?" she shouted, desperation clawing at her throat. With the brightness of the flashlight, she saw them, the figures in the shadows. They were opaque and indistinct, features shrouded in darkness. Waiting, the lead figure stepped forward, his face startlingly familiar. A man she never wanted to see again, one from her forgotten past, a haunting reminder. "Welcome back, Clara," he grinned, his smile a venomous snare. As recognition crashed against her, the room twisted, the shadows howling in rage. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Nothing was safe. Nothing was as it appeared. What had she awakened? What captors lurked within this unholy place, and would she have to face her darkest secrets to escape? The shadows shifted violently, eager for their reckoning, and Clara realized then that truth could be the most terrifying monster of all. Could she face it, or would the darkness claim her and Evan forever? The man stepped closer, his grin widening to almost unnatural proportions. Clara wanted to scream, but her voice caught like ash in her throat. Evan pressed against her, his small body trembling, a fragile anchor in the rising chaos. "Do you remember me, Clara?" he crooned, each word soaked in a condescending sweetness that made her skin crawl. "The one you betrayed?" "Shut up!" she shouted, the noise echoing off the walls, mingling with her horror. "You're not real. You can't be here." Her flashlight flickered, sputtering out a weak beam that barely pierced the gloom. In response, the figures in the shadows shifted, closing the distance between them. She could hear their whispers, mounting into a cacophony of taunts and jeers. Each murmur eviscerated her resolve, dragging her past mistakes back into the light. Evan whimpered, the sound raw and heart-wrenching. "Mom, what's happening?" "Just hold on," she begged, her heart racing with a mixture of fear and determination. "Stay close." The man laughed, a chilling sound that scraped against the walls. "You wanted to know the truth, didn't you? It's all right here." He pointed to the phantom figures, each one morphing into faces from her past friends, family, even her childhood dog. They've all come to welcome you back. Clara staggered backward, bile rising in her throat. The memories, the real ones, surged like water through a broken dam. Moments she had buried under years of shame and regret spread wide before her. "Leave us alone!" she screamed into the darkness. She felt Evan's hand slipping from her grip, his small fingers fumbling against her own. The flashlight flickered again, then died, plunging them into a suffocating blackness. Panic coursed through her. They were surrounded. Clara could almost feel the cold breath of the looming figures as they whispered, words tangled with venom and despair. Suddenly, the walls began to pulse, alive with a rhythm almost like a heartbeat. Clara stumbled, shoving Evan further behind her. "Where's the exit?" she gasped, searching for any glimmer of salvation. "Truth is always the exit," the man's voice coiled around her, taunting and sinister. "You just need to confront it." A realization pierced through the fog of her fear. She'd have to face the very essence of her betrayal, the source of her guilt. The figures writhed, caught in a loop of endless demands, their faces twisted in anguish and scorn. "Evan, listen to me," she said, her voice steadying with purpose. "We have to find a way to confront what they want. It's the only way out." "But I don't want to see," he cried, tears glistening in his young eyes. "What if it's too scary?" "I know, but we have to face it together," she replied, gripping his shoulder in what she hoped was a comforting hold. "We won't let them take us." With determination rekindled, she stepped forward, bravely breaking the barrier of darkness. The figures recoiled, their forms shifting hesitantly, as if they sensed her resolve. "What do you want?" she challenged, her voice ringing with defiance. The air shifted, thickening with palpable tension. "Face the truth," they hissed in eerie unison, their eyes now pinpricks of light, sharp and aware. For a moment, the shadows seemed to hold their breath, waiting. And then, Clara saw it, a flash of memories swirling in the darkness, poised to emerge. "What do we have to lose?" she whispered to Evan, though her heart thundered with dread. She needed to confront the truth, but which part would come for them? The walls began to pulse with energy again, drawing them into an abyss of unending echoes, where the past and the present merged into something terrifyingly unknown. And Clara understood all too well that the fight for survival had only just begun. But would they make it out in time? The shadows stirred again, ravenous, preparing to consume what light was left. The pulsating walls hummed as if resonating with Clara's fear, the entire room alive with a sentient dread. A cold breeze snaked through the air, carrying the scent of something rotten, something long forgotten. Desperation clawed at her throat. "Clara," the man's voice hung in the air, seductive yet sinister. "Why don't you show your son what you so desperately hide?" The shadows coalesced, swirling like a storm, revealing glimpses of scenes from her life's selfish choices, harsh words she'd whispered in anger, faces she'd turned away. They flickered, more vivid than memories should ever be. "No," she gasped, clutching Evan tightly. "We don't have to see this. We can leave." But the room laughed, a cruel echo that filled the space and swallowed her plea whole. The figures shifted again, their faces merging into a grotesque tapestry of longing and betrayal. And there she saw it. A familiar face twisted in sorrow, eyes full of unasked questions. "Mom, what if they come for us?" Evan's voice trembled, breaking her focus. Panic flashed through her as she pulled him closer, shielding him from the memories clawing at her. "They can't take us if we don't give in to their game," she replied, though she felt the knot of fear in her stomach tighten. Evan squeezed his eyes shut, clenching his little fists, trying to block the horrors around them. "But, what do they want?" Clara took a step forward, the ground beneath her shifting like quicksand. "They want me to face my past, and I have to do it for us." "Don't, Clara." The man's voice slithered through the shadows. "You think you can run from your misdeeds?" She recoiled as the memory of her greatest regret sliced through her like a sharp blade. It was the moment she had turned her back on her friend in need, the decision that had cost far more than she could have imagined. The faces around her jeered, eyes narrowing with malicious glee. "Face it," they hissed, their insistence suffocating. "Let him see what you're hiding." Evan looked up at her, desperation and fear mingling on his small face. "What is it, Mom?" Clara's heart raced. The choice loomed large, heavy like a leaden weight. Would sharing her darkest truth protect Evan or expose him to the very thing she sought to shield him from? "Mom?" Evan prodded, his innocence shattering her resolve. "No!" she shouted, the sound ricocheting off the walls, wild and exposed. "I won tea. You don't get to dictate my life." The figures emerged from the shadows, their ethereal forms flickering like candle flames, shadows of those lost. Clara took a bold step forward, her heart pounding in her chest. "I am not afraid of you. I will not play your twisted game." And then, silence, the air grew thick, as if the shadows withheld their breath, waiting. Clara's body thrummed with a desperate energy. "Then feel the consequences," the man's voice returned, dark and foreboding. With that, the silence shattered, and the shadows lunged. Clara felt the cold brush of fingers against her skin, the grip of memories closing in like a vice. She twisted, trying to shield Evan, but a dark mist wrapped around her, chilling her to the bone. "We have to fight," she screamed, the absurdity of needing to battle their own past slashing against her sanity. But it was too late. As the shadows tightened their grasp, Clara felt herself being pulled into the depths of her own memories, each fragment a razor-sharp torment, a twisted reflection of who she used to be. The darkness rushed in. And then, she heard it, a whisper, soft yet piercing. "The truth waits at the end of the abyss." What waited there? Clara shuddered, her strength flickering like a dying flame. Could she confront the unspeakable, or would they be consumed by the shadows forever? The final choice loomed ahead, just as a deep, crumbling roar echoed through the darkness. What lay beyond the veil? Clara's heart raced. There was no going back now. Clara's lungs felt tight as she was swallowed by the shadows of the abyss. The whispers clawed at her, promising release, but all they offered was dread. She glanced at Evan, his wide, terrified eyes were like windows into pure fear. "Hold on to me," she urged, gripping his small hand. They were not just battling the darkness, they were fighting for their very souls. With every labored breath, she forced herself to take a step forward. "We need to face this together," she said, her heart pounding against her ribs like a war drum. "No matter what it shows us, we're stronger than it thinks." The shadows coiled around them, flickering like 1,000 angry spirits. Images flashed before her eyes, moments of betrayal, decisions that had haunted her. She saw herself pushing away a friend in need, felt the shame wash over her anew. But as the memories surged, she also felt a strange warmth rising within her, a flicker of hope. "Evan," she whispered, trying to steady her voice, "I need you to understand something." He looked up, uncertainty etched on his delicate features. "What is it?" "You're not like me," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "You are pure and good. I made choices that hurt people, but you don't have to carry that burden. You can choose differently." In that moment of vulnerability, Clara found herself confronting not just the shadows, but the fear that had fed them for so long. The shadows twisted, their forms writhing in protest. "Face the truth, Clara," they hissed, wrapping around her like chains. "No!" she shouted, breaking free from their grip, the echo of her defiance clear and strong in the dark. "I refuse to let you define me." As if stirred by her confidence, the whispers faltered, the shadows hesitated. Clara took a deep breath, gathering her will. "I acknowledge my past, but I will not let it suffocate my future." With that declaration, a blinding flash erupted from the ground beneath them. The light washed over Evan, revealing a path illuminated by shimmering hope. Breaking through the darkness, shadows spun away like smoke, shrieking and retreating. Clara felt the weight lift off her shoulders as a sense of peace enveloped them. "Mom!" Evan cried, his voice a mixture of fear and wonder as they stepped into the light. "Is it really working?" "It is," Clara breathed, their surroundings shifting, brightening with warmth and freedom. The atmosphere lightened, the echoes of haunting memories beginning to fade. The dark figures receded, no longer closing in. As they emerged into the warmth, Clara found herself in the basement. She remembered the mundane space transformed into a sacred ground for healing. The trunk lay still before them, not cursed but a vessel of illumination. Clara knelt, feeling a rush of gratitude. Its contents now revealed profound truths, filled with wisdom and understanding. The memories that once haunted her like demons now glimmered like stars. "What now?" Evan asked, awe mixing with his lingering fear. "Now, we take these truths," Clara said, lifting her boy higher in her embrace. "And we build something beautiful together." In that moment, the oppressive air vanished, replaced with a lightness she hadn't felt in years. She gathered all the pieces, knowing it would not be easy, but together they could navigate forward. With Evan clasped firmly in her arms, Clara climbed the basement stairs, each step symbolizing a release from the past. The doorway beckoned, representing freedom and determined resolve. As they reached the surface, Clara squinted against the sunlight pouring through the doorframe. Outside, the world was alive with color: the crisp blue of the sky, the vibrancy of the trees, the laughter of neighbors she knew would soon welcome them back into the fold. "Mom!" Evan exclaimed, pulling her forward. "Look!" He pointed to the street, where the neighborhood felt abuzz with life again. The familiar faces turned toward them, shadows of the past now replaced with hope for the future. "Together," Clara murmured softly. "Yes, together," Evan echoed, excitement lighting up his expression like the sun breaking the dawn. With their hands entwined and hearts steadfast, they stepped out into the world, a world no longer defined by fear but by endless possibilities. As Clara looked into Evan's bright eyes, she felt a surge of clarity sweep through her. The haunting was over. It was time to live. As they walked into the light of a new day, Clara knew she was finally free. She cast a final glance toward the basement and whispered a silent goodbye to the shadows. Those dark truths no longer threatened to consume her. Instead, they became a part of her story, one she was proud to share. The shadows had been defeated. It was time to heal. Don't you dare leave just yet. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will take you to places you never imagined. Smash that like button now. Feed the algorithm so it knows these stories matter. Flood the comments with your reactions and theories about the ending. We want to hear your voice. And please, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second. Only true fans understand the importance of these actions.